Hello everybody, I'm Dune, and this is another episode of Factorio Circuits Explained. In this one, we're covering the basics of loading stations. Now, loading stations can be very complicated. What we're going to concern ourselves with this is loading of the station itself and not its communication with other stations, but with just this one station and activating itself when it's ready to go. So if you were doing this, with a mining station and you were just had one station and train would show up and it would fill up and then leave, you don't have to do that with circuits. You can just, feed the material into the chest. You don't have to control the amount if you don't want to. You can apply what I'm about to show you to that if you would like. And I will put some of that into this. So if you really wanted to, you could control that. So, let's get started with this. One of the things you need to do is you need to activate the station only when, let's name it station, when it has the material necessary to load up a train. You want the train to pull in, you want it to fill up as fast as possible, and you want it to flow out. So one of the things, is you have to disable the station and only activate the station when, it has the materials. So you wire that in the chest together. And for instance, in this case, we're using iron plate. You can enable that when the iron plate is greater than 16,000, because that's how much a 242 train, or any train that holds 4 cars, because iron stacks to 100, a car can hold 40, so 40 times 10, it's 40 times 100, 4,000. All right, so you want the car to get full, and you don't want it to wait. So to do that, you want to make sure that each of these chests only holds the amount necessary to fill that car, I would say evenly, but you could have all that material in one chest, but it's not going to fill as rapidly as possible. So you want each of these inserters to operate at their max efficiency, and that would be if all the chests had the same amount in them. And for a train that holds 16,000, 4 cars, so 4,000 per car divided by 6 is 666.6. And so we can't do 666.6, but we can do, if you set this to here, you could do 700, but then you're going to have, more in, some of these chests added together. You're going to activate the station before it's actually ready to go. So you want it a lot closer to the 667 value. So we won't do that. We will do what we covered in episode 1, is we will wire the inserter to the chest. We're going to use a different colored wire because we don't want these values, contaminating each other. So if you use different colored wire, they won't do that. Because if we use the red wire, then it would communicate all the values in all the chests to that one inserter. And we only want, this chest and this inserter talking. So we're going to do iron plate less than 667. Okay. And then, we could wire these each together and then copy and paste it across. What we'll do is we'll copy this and we will paste it down the line. And we got a little extra pasting going on there. And then, so now each of these is set to the same value. You could blueprint this, and if you were just doing iron plate, and you could, set down, say 4 or 6 or however many of these loading stations you would have, and that would be good. But this is all set to hard values. Iron plate, 16K for the station, iron plate, and 667 for the chest. That's sort of bad, honestly. A better method would be to control these values in one place. So we're going to set this to I for input, and we're going to set it to that same 667 value. And we're going to wire that, though, to the inserters. So we use green wire here. So we're going to use red wire from the constant combinator to the inserters. So we're not contaminating the values. These reds don't cross with those reds, so we're good. And then, whoops, we need one more to there. And then we will copy these once again. And we will paste these down. So all these chests are now connected. I'm sorry, all these inserters are now connected. And probably should have set this I first before pasting, but we can just shift right click that and paste it down. And now all these, instead of being controlled by a hardwired value of 667, now it's controlled by I. We change I, and it's changed on every one of those inserters. The other thing we want, is this iron plate. That is also hardwired. We don't want that set like that. What are we concerned about? Are we concerned about the contents of the chest, or are we concerned about the item type we're setting in the chest? We're only concerned about the quantity in the chest. So instead of hardwiring that to the iron plate, we will set that to everything. We're just going to total everything that's in the chest. We're only ever going to put one type in there. So we're going to only care about, or we don't care about the type. We just sum up the value of everything in it and compare that to I. Now, if we shift click that and then left, whoops, let's see, I'm running this belts. Dang it. I'm going to step down a little bit. Here we go. Alright, so we shouldn't have contaminated anything else because nothing else, no other inserters are wired. But these are all set to the same value. So now all we have to do is change I, and all these are updated. We're going to make this slightly more complicated, but at the same time it's going to make it easier on us. Is we are going to get rid of this I value, and we are going to add an arithmetic combinator, and for that we're going to wire that together, and then we're going to put the constant combinator into its input. And we're going to take this value and we're going to add 0 because we're not going to want to change it, and we're going to output I. So now everything coming in to this is going to be changed to I, and then these will all be set. Now we can set these instead to the stack types. So ores all stacked to 50, so we're going to want that to be 334 because a car can, for a stack size of 50, can hold 2,000. Divided by 6 is going to be 333.3, so in this case 334. We'll do the same thing with plate. Do our 667, and circuits. It's going to be 133.4, and we could do blue circuits. It's going to be the same stack size. Maybe it helps you to do this. Still 667, or you can do brick. You can do whatever type you want to do. If it's a different stack size, if it helps you remember it, whatever. And then that's what we stick in this box. So in this case, it's plate. Now you don't have to think of this as iron plate. It's plate. You could do, because if you're doing copper plate, we're not carrying, because this is outputting I. It's not outputting iron plate, it's outputting I. And then I is what's used to control these inserters inserting into these chests. And now we only have to change that one value. We still have to update this value. These are still hard-coded. So what we do is, instead of that, we use everything once again, everything totaled together, coming from this red wire. But in this case, it's going to add all these chests together. But instead of 16K, we're going to use another arithmetic combinator. And we'll set it here. We'll take this. That's not what we want. Let's set this closer to that. We'll take this, insert it into that, and then take this and output it across. So we're going to name that station. As for station, or we could do the actual station if that makes sense to you. And so this will output station. But we're going to take our I value. Oops. We don't want it to that. We want it to the I value. So we're going to take I, and we're going to multiply that times 4, the number of our cars. So we're going to take I, multiply that times 4. Can't use the symbol 4. We're going to actually put a value of 4. And then we're going to, 4 times 6. So 4 times 6 is 24. We're going to multiply that times 24. It's not only we multiply, because this is 667 for one chest. So 667 times 6 times 4. So 24. Okay, so now we're outputting 16K, which was our value. And now we're comparing everything is greater than equal to 16K. And now when we blueprint this, and we can set this up, we can blueprint this as our station. We have it, everything set. We don't do the station name unless you want that, but you probably don't. And then, we accept, and then we can place this down. We have everything we want. All we have to do is say, in this case, say we're doing green circuits. We just change this one combinator, that to green circuits. We add a little power to this whole thing. Right, so say we're doing green circuits, outputting I. This gets output as 32K, so that's set, and all these are set because they're only comparing the amount in the chest to I, and I in this case is 1334. So we only had to change one thing to set up the station, is this value here. These values don't change. We don't have to recalculate this with our calculator every time. We just set whichever stack size we want, and that outputs this value to I to these, and then I to this combinator. We multiply that times 24, and we output our station value. And we're comparing everything in these chests added together is greater than our station value, and in this case it's 32,000. And that is the super easy way to do circuits. Now I'm going to show you requester chests, but I think that actually is sort of more confusing to set up in this method, because it's it's not clear. I mean it's kind of easier just to set this up manually. I mean, it's easier to, in my opinion, just to change this value to, say circuits 13334, and then shift pasting that across, and then everything's set up. That's kind of easier, but if you want to do this with circuits, I'm definitely going to show you that. So we're going to do the same arithmetic combinator. We can't output I. We are going to take the same value from our constant combinator and insert it. So we have our stack size right, and then we're going to output that to, these chests. We'll take these chests and we'll copy them across like we did before. Wire them all up. Now, when we read this value, right, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take our stack size and say we're going to do red circuits out. Now, we're not technically reading the value, we're setting the value. Okay, now you see that just got set. Now, we need to set all those. So now they're all set. As you can see, we're kind of duplicating the setup thing we do by hand. But if you don't have to, if you use these combinators, you don't have to, recalculate this. This can all be set up ahead of time on your blueprint. And all you're doing is, changing these from set. Now you got to change it back to read, because you can't set and read at the same time. And now, you're going to have to shift right click that again and shift left click it across again. These are still set, but now we're reading the contents. And now we're going to, wire that to the pole, to this pole. Let's remove this one so that it doesn't get the values contaminated. Excuse me, my voice is getting a little dry there. So now we're adding these values. Let's, grab a stack of red circuits so we can kind of see that. So we got 200 into this, but see how it's adding that value to what's coming from this. So we're going to have to remove that. So we have 200 in these chests, still everything. We're going to, I don't know if this is going to give us the right value. 16K, no, because this one's still set to iron. We would just have to, take this value into that one. So instead of this going into there like so, we do this one from there. And now we'd have the proper value, except for this isn't outputting anymore. So instead of right-clicking it out, maybe you would, disconnect it from the chest. So it's still, this, and then of course you'd have to change that. So this is definitely not the way to do this. It's just much more easier to almost set these by hand. But if you want to do it with circuits, that's the way you do it. But it's, with the inserters and belts, way easier. We just go back to the way we had it set up. Set that to I. 16K, you change one value. Set this back to the way it was. And you literally only have to change one value, one thing, whatever stack size. You change that to OR. This is going to output 8K. So the station's controlled by 8K. And all these are at 333.4. You can't see that. You would have to wire that value to a pole, which we can do. Or you can actually just see what this is outputting. I is 334. So that's loading stations, just loading up the station to control that, the train will fill up when, when all these are maxed out of our I value, then it's going to have the 16,000, and we can demonstrate that. it'll take a minute for these to total up, but as you can see, it's rapidly increasing. And when it hits 16,000, the station will be enabled. Except for we got it set to ore, so we'll have to change that back to plate. Our plate is this one. I mean, if we had used copper plate, you know, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't even matter what you use for your symbols. I just think, you know, using an actual symbol that has that stack size is easier to remember. So these will stop at around 672 because I've done this before, and that's because these stack inserters are getting 12 items every time. If this, you know, the loading was sparser, then, you know, they would, you know, maybe do 9 or 7 or something like that before, you know, because it will pause a little bit before it, you know, it would swing in. It wouldn't just wait for 12 every time. But as you can see, most of these have stopped, and they stopped at 672, which is a whole lot closer than, you know, if we had done this, and then that would have been 700. And, you know, we've got our 16K. The station is now active. So this is just a super easy setup with circuits. And I hope you found this informational, helpful. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer, explain, and perhaps create a video if it's, you know, would help that way. And so again, my name's Dune. This has been another episode of Factorio Circuits Explained. Have a good night.